everything,
Yeah.
right? Like all we were doing was mouth. Like we would do in like the gymnasium, and they put, remember Brian, they put like tape on the ground, like pretend you're in Baghdad. You're like, I don't know, this is a little silly, right? With plastic guns. And then it's saying, oh, like Nick, you're going to 107th Airborne and going to Afghanistan. I remember people saying, oh, that's so great, you're not going to Iraq.
Right. Yeah, in the mid 2000s, that all the casualties were in Iraq. We had to have the surge. Every day people were dying. Iraq was definitely the focus. And Afghanistan seemed easy back then. I was an astronaut by then. I volunteered to go over a couple of times and they said no. Afghanistan just seemed easy in the news because all the focus was on Iraq in the 2000s. I know it wasn't easy, but that was yeah.
It is interesting though, some of the parallels.
Yeah.
Some of the guys talk about how, what's going on in Afghanistan now feels like what happened in Iraq years ago.
Right.
And then even talking to some guys who are still on active duty that we used to serve with, who are now, battalion commanders, brigade commanders higher, they had to go back into Iraq in 2016 timeframe and do it all over again. And that's coming up already, right? Like when are we going back into Afghanistan?
Right.
I had a buddy who was in Mosul initially as a Marine, and I can't imagine, well, now I can, what it felt like for him to watch ISIS come in.
Yeah.
The same streets, the same thing. And it's been surreal the past 4 to 5 days. And there's these little images that keep popping up that just, throw me for a loop. One of them I saw yesterday was they had a picture of a Talib on the back of a truck, and the guy had an ACOG and M4. I did 2 deployments, a 15-month one in 2007 and a 12-month in 2009. I can't fathom a Taliban fighter having an M4.
What's an M4 for the listeners?
Just like a United States Army issued weapon system that they give to the gun that every soldier has.
Right.
And this guy's
like the M16.
Yeah, he is an M16, and it seemed like everything was Russian air, right? RPGs, AK-47s, PKMs, everything. And how much have we screwed this up that the Mujahideen are taking U.S. weapon systems? Think about it. Like it's just madness, right? Like they're walking around with an M4 and an ACOG.
Right.
And that just opens up a whole, a whole nother, Pandora's box.
It does. But if you look at the history of Afghanistan, well, first of all, the Brits went there in the 1800s and they finally cried uncle. The Soviets went there in 79. They cried uncle. And, and we were arming the Mujahideen at the time. And, the Soviet weapons stuck around for a long time. So there's constantly these Western powers coming in and leaving behind arms that the next group uses against the next group. And it's a century and a half history that just seems to repeat itself.
Sure does. I remember being in a valley in northern Afghanistan when the Afghan National, I think it was Air Force, was flying over with Russian Hinds. They learned how to fly.
Right.
And then all the villagers on the ground thought the Russians were coming back, So it's, we'll see if they use Apaches down the road. Who knows?
I saw there was a video of some B-52s going in last week, and the caption was, they're not going to bomb the Taliban, they're going to bomb American equipment. They're trying to destroy the airplanes and stuff that we left behind. We're bombing our own stuff, which, it makes you feel kind of shitty having been there, right? And so, Nick, let's talk about your experience there. What were you, infantry or cavalry or armor or what?
Yeah, so I was a fire support officer. So I was an artillery officer assigned to an infantry brigade. So it was 173rd Airborne Infantry Brigade out of Vicenza, Italy, and I was assigned to an infantry battalion. So I had the best job in the Army. I got to be with the infantry on the front lines. But whenever they started doing really hard stuff, I'd say I have to go do artillery things, right? Saying, hey, listen, I got to go practice, my call to fire. You guys go hang out in the mud and go roll around or do whatever you want to do. With that, it was really, I was humbled and honored to be able to join 1st Battalion 503rd. And we deployed to Paktika province in a place called Fab Tillman, named after the football player Pat Tillman. Mm-hmm. And we were about 2 kilometers away from the Pakistan border, completely surrounded for 15 months. And it was really tough. I mean, we fought a lot, outnumbered, surrounded, and there's so many experiences there. And the guys that I'm trading text messages with right now, I'll never forget that. And then I had another opportunity after that deployment where I became the battalion fire support officer for our infantry battalion. When we went back to Afghanistan, this time in the province south of Kabul called Wardak, which even though it's very close to the capital, is a little bit of the Wild West, which has a little bit of everything, a little bit of city, a really dangerous valley called the Tangi Valley, and then the no man's land, the Western Valley. So that was 12 months. So a total of about 27 months in Afghanistan over 4 years.
27 months over in a 4-year period. Wow. And
yeah.
So there's so many questions I want to ask you. You said you were fighting a lot. Who were you fighting? Is it the Taliban?
Everybody. It was always eerie when our interpreters would be on the radio and say, Chechens.
Like, Chechens.
What? Everybody, wow. Right? You just hear like all these different, these voices and, different type of, and they say, these people are Tajiks. These people are from wherever it is. And so, we'd fight people coming right across the Pakistan border. Right. One of our OPs was 100 meters away, right? We got some pretty big, scraps up there.
What's an OP?
And I'm sorry, observation post.
Okay.
At a place called Spera Kop, which is in the middle of nowhere. We put this tiny little base on this massive infill route, which of course pissed them off. So they tried to overrun it.
Right.
But, and we also fight the local villagers. And I'll never forget my second deployment where a shopkeeper pulled me aside and saying, listen, I shot at you guys the other day because they offered me more money.